part man, part machine, and believes the best things in life come standard with projectiles. Give it up for Michael Isakov and Robo-Duel. This gamer is so envied, he won't even buy AAA batteries. Make some steam for Marcus Blockchain Howard and ProjectMQ for those introductions. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, welcome everybody to the Sports Startup Digital Debate Competition. This is the Sweet 16 for the Esports and Gaming Competition, and we have two amazing startup founders, Marcus Howard and Michael Isakov. We have the founder of Robo-Duels and the founder of ProjectMQ going head-to-head in a debate competition. For this, we're going to do a coin flip to figure out who goes first. So I'll give it to you, Marcus. Who would you like to have, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. All right, let's do this. It is heads. Would you like to?
All right.
Would you like to speak first, or would you like Michael to speak first?
I'll speak first.
Amazing. So we're going to kick this off. You're each going to have 30 seconds to give your answer, and then the next person can counter. Are you guys okay with those rules?
Sounds good.
Cool. Let's get it on. All right. So first question: are you for or against getting violence out of video games?
I'm against getting violence out of video games. I think there's a time and place for violence in a particular medium for a particular audience. Just like you have parental advisory over movies and TV, you should have that same kind of responsibility for your kids on what they consume in video games. So I think we should have violence there, but it just needs to have parents more aware of what's happening and allow the space to grow as it needs to grow.
Got it. And what would you say is your stance on this, Michael? Would you have violence in or out of video games?
Yeah, so definitely I am for violence within video games. Obviously you want to have it controlled. So basically respect ESRB ratings and also respect parental guidelines and give all the measures so that the right people are playing the right games. There is some controversy over this, necessarily specifically among teens. And it actually has been found that as games and esports has grown over the past 20 years, criminalization and crime has gone down. And it's found that it's a great way for people to let out their aggression. And it's also, kind of a core part of the entertainment value. So I would definitely keep it in, but just maintain some level of control for.
So how do you control it? What would be your stance for parents or people that are overlooking children that have their hands on violent video games? What would be your stance to control that? I'll let you go, Marcus.
You need to have more tools available for parents and also more education for parents. What they're doing is just turning on the apps and not really understanding what's happening in the space. What kind of variety is available between something as innocent as, Rocket League all the way up to Mortal Kombat, right? All of that exists in the same ecosystem, but parents aren't well educated enough because the publishers aren't really doing enough, and the ecosystem as a whole. I think each of us can help make and raise the awareness about how to make this responsible gameplay.
Michael, what would you be your counter on that?
So it really comes down to the distribution platforms. So when you download a game from Steam or you download a game from Epic Games, and it has extreme blood, extreme gore, and it has an ESRB rating that restricts a certain age group, there needs to be some age verification process. A lot of companies decide to kind of sidestep this a little bit, and just adding a little bit of stronger measures would kind of fix that. Although to be fair, it hasn't been a tremendous issue necessarily that's overtaken the national discourse, and it's not something that's crime is not going up all of a sudden because GTA just came out. Actually, you'll see that there's a correlation between the Grand Theft Auto release dates and crimes going down because people are just obsessed with the games. They're busy and home and playing games. So really, it comes down to the distributors.
Got it. So for the next question, what would video games look like in 10 years? What is your prediction on that?
I think in 10 years, you're going to see more virtual reality games and games that really kind of tap more into individual players, give them the ability to really kind of represent themselves and have the creativity, that their own mark on the gameplay experience. It's not just a cookie cutter model. It's something that maybe represents who you are individually, your activity, things that add extra elements to the gameplay experience.
In 10 years, where I see gaming is progressing beyond the base categories that we have right now. So you have FPS, MMO, and you have a bunch of these other categories. And in each one of those categories, you have one game that is really hooking on the mainstream. In 10 years, that trend will continue with more creativity and novelty in terms of game types, like the recent Battle Royale craze with Fortnite and PUBG. Really, when you're looking at turning gaming into something completely mainstream, and particularly the competitive part of esports, you really want to look at something that has a mass multiplayer appeal and either some sort of sandbox or some sort of competitive, play, either sports or violence, and then put that all together into a package. Now, I can go on a little bit about how to make it like FC Barcelona level or Real Madrid level. In my opinion, that's by adding a level of spectacle to it, so that the average person who doesn't play video games at all could simply just look at it and see the game kind of in real life instead of people just looking at screens in a stadium. And that's kind of what we do at RoboDuels by trying to make this new category of gaming called reality gaming, where it's like a game that you would play as a gamer, but it's actually happening in real life and other people could watch it and consume it. So that's where I see gaming going in the next 10 years. Like, our pro gamers are gonna sit and control robots and fight each other. And it's gonna be really nice to look at, and a lot of people are gonna watch it.
And anything to counter on that, Marcus?
Yeah, you're already starting to see some of that happen. There's the augmented reality game, Hado. It's like digital dodgeball, right? So it has all the physicality of what you see in traditional sports with that gamified element. And to what we were talking about earlier, there's also indie games going to actually be really the future of the space. You talk about PUBG. PUBG created the entire battle royale genre. It never would have existed had that game not started first, and then Epic Games created Fortnite based on that gameplay experience. So you'll start to see a lot more mainstream and AAA studio publishers start to adopt the gameplay mechanics that are generated from the indie space, because indie is where the innovation is happening, and then it goes mainstream from there.
Nice. Next question would be, how do we solve the addiction of gaming in a constructive way? Whether it's violence or overconsumption, what would be your stance on how do we solve that problem?
I think you gamify the ability to play games for younger audiences where they don't really have the self-control they've developed internally yet. So, just like if you used to do chores when you were growing up and you had a star system, and if you got so many stars and your parents gave you something of value, you add that into your ecosystem so it unlocks a certain number of hours of play. That way that you're getting some constructive activity from the kids or adults, right, before they have the opportunity to really enjoy the entertainment, so that you have that careful balance that you need.
Yeah, so on my end, I would say that what you have with sports, that's the example that I'd look at. With sports, it's a game, just like a video game could be, but there's the aspect of you're physically involved. So you're actually getting something constructive by throwing a ball in a hoop or hitting a puck into a net. You're getting this physical aspect out of it. You're also getting the team aspect. Now, you can get the team aspect out of video games, and that's kind of constructive and takes you away from the addictive side and how people develop socially by playing video games who would otherwise be antisocial. However, video games, I feel like, need a kind of layer of educational value, so that as you're playing it, as your brain is running on a bicycle and doing all these quests and stuff like that, and all these missions, you actually begin to learn a lot of things that have real life value. So, for example, a game like Age of Empires 1, 2, and 3, or Assassin's Creed, they put you in a historical setting and you actually learn about the history of the time. Similarly, if you can start integrating, kind of real life components, or in our case, like robotics, that's our pitch. It's basically to say, okay, you're controlling a real life robot, you're learning all the aspects of robotics, you're learning the fundamentals of robotics, and you're becoming literate, at least scientifically literate in this aspect, in this field. So I think that's where games need to go, is they need to really kind of, personalize and bind to these things that are more constructively educational.
And speaking on the education piece, that's some personal responsibility. You have the World Health Organization saying at the end of last year, declaring that there is an addiction, and again, there are some addictive components to over playing video games, but even in the midst of this pandemic, they then turn around and recommend this as a healthy social activity. So I think there's more that needs to be done about defining what piece of this is the addiction and how do we address it in a meaningful way instead of just slapping a label on it.
Amazing. So that's the 10-minute mark, but we'll have an extra question here. So Are you for or against having mobile gaming becoming the leading experience for gamers in the near future? And that will be the final question here.
I'm for mobile gaming going mainstream in the future because it's more accessible. If you look at mainstream competitive spaces, there's not a lot of diversity and representation in the groups of people who get to participate in that. And I think there are a lot more people who have maybe $100, $200, $500 phone than they have several $1,000s worth of a competitive rig that you need to really be in this space. So I think it really opens it up for even different demographics, older demographics, younger demographics, a lot more people to get involved in this space when everyone has the same access to the same device to be a part of the experience.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see that desktop gaming is going to continue to be dominant for the time being because I just don't see that mobile game that's going to unify everyone together. The big problem for competitive gameplay specifically, and that's why people invest in all these crazy rigs, and there's this whole huge industry behind, like getting the best gaming computer and gaming equipment. It's because of the input. So with your thumbs, you can only input so many commands at once. You can interface with the game only so much. However, with a keyboard, with a mouse, with a virtual reality headset, with a bodysuit, you can get fully immersed and integrated into the game and do things and actually like kind of almost merge with that digital world completely in a way that makes it so much more human and in a way that will be so much more entertaining for other people to watch.
That's a good point. But you also have controllers that are coming in as extra inputs for these machines. So if you look at Microsoft is doing that now. You can take a $50, $75 controller and Bluetooth it to the mobile device. Now you have the extra input. You also have Google having the Google goggles, right? They give you the ability to take your same phone and create that VR experience. So while you're right, you definitely have more precise and more range of inputs and experiences with a more expensive rig. I think there are ways to step up the engagement on a mobile device again so that it has mass market appeal.
So the divide right now between the mobile kind of input and all these other kind of new things that you kind of mentioned and the actual keyboard and mouse and kind of at-home VR setups, it's extremely wide. So I don't really see that coming out for another several years as it gets even more advanced. Even Magic Leap, I don't know if you ever use that, but it's kind of apparently the most advanced kind of VR system that you can get that is just like all in one. And it's still extremely limited. And it's going to be many years before that's even there. And then before people start making really, really compelling games for that. So for the time being, at least until the end of this decade, I really see desktop gaming and just gaming traditionally maintaining its course.
You make a good point there about Magic Leap, but also remember Magic Leap even self-describes themselves as not a gaming company. There's one of the reasons while the rest of the industry is booming, they had to go unfortunately lay off 1,000 people, right? They specifically intentionally designed it not to be a gaming VR platform. So while that's right, I think if you have something where a company is going all in on gaming, they can create something that's at a low enough price point but allows people to really be a part of the experience and enjoy everything that we enjoy with computers and desktop gaming.
Great job, guys. So that will conclude the first round of the Sweet 16 for the esports and gaming. Appreciate that. Please, everyone that is tuning in, drop any comments or recommendations on who you think won that round. But thank you guys for the first round and completeness.
And let's introduce our judges. First up, Waylon Chin, CEO and Managing Partner at First Serve Partners. Next up, Ben Kessler, Vice President at Maestro Sports and Entertainment. Last but not least, Lance Dietz, Principal at KB Partners. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
Right, that was a great debate we just had with Marcus and Michael, and now we're on to the analysis and votes for our judges. So we're going to kick this off, and we're going to have Waylon, if you could provide your analysis and a vote for who you think won that round.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with the first question. That question on violence. We've, as a firm at FSP, we've looked at a lot of studies and research into, this particular topic. It definitely is a point of consideration, I think, as we look at the space overall and how that affects, emerging generations. We take this very seriously. However, it's from our research thus far, it seems like there hasn't been any strong correlations in terms of, violence in game and in reality. And I think, I really appreciated Michael's point on this, where he touched on, the stricter measures that publishers can take in terms of age requirements and better screening as to who their users are and gamers are on their platforms. And I think overall the professionalization of video gaming and esports has also helped that. We have kids that we've had on contract since they were 16, waiting in line to play on our Call of Duty team, for example, where there's top talent. So I think, and just to clarify, they were good, Halo players maybe. So there's definitely, consideration on that point, but I'll give that to Michael. And in terms of, the second question, as over the 10-year, sort of landscape as to what video games may and the whole gaming space might become, I'm gonna have to lean on Michael's answer as well there. I think, I personally, I feel that, that I agree a lot in terms of where, again, the professionalization of video gaming in general will dictate where the space goes. That's where the most money, resources, and fans will be. And, the sensationalization of the entire gaming experience through the professionalization of the sport and video gaming, in a sense, will lead that continued evolution of this entire space. So and then going back into gaming specifically, I think game formats, they both have very interesting answers. I'm not a huge fan of VR AR personally, but I agree on that. I don't think, I've had this discussion a lot also with the team. It's I don't think there's a perfect game format yet in terms of what is a perfect game for esports. So I think that we will see that to come in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'm going to give that to Michael, and I think so overall, I think I'd give it to Michael on that debate.
Great, thank you for that valuable insight. So Michael, you have one vote for that, and then we'll move on to Ben. So Ben, could you provide your quick analysis and your vote for who you think won the that round?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd like to say that was a great debate. I really enjoyed this topic, as I believe that the esports is really in its infancy mode still, and still continuing to grow each and every day. So it was great to hear, both sides of it, and the ideas and what was kind of going on in the current state. I'll move on to the next question, was on addiction and around that topic. And, I really thought that both answers were great. Marcus talked about the gamification and the whole ecosystem of unlocking hours of play if you were to do chores. And, Michael went on to talk about, comparing it to sports and what's going on. Too much of anything isn't good, but when you talk about, when Michael went on to talk about the team aspects of things and the socialization and the educational, aspects of what gaming could do, from, his robotics platform of, actually interacting with, today's, artificial intelligence and learning about robotics and other things you can learn within video games, not just having fun. I thought he did a great job of talking about addiction and bringing it to the real world, what we're talking about today. So I thought that Michael did a great job at that question alone and won that question. Moving on to the mobile gaming side of things. Again, this is a very interesting topic, as people are using their phones every single day, and a lot of people are, engaging in different content, whether that's Instagram and Facebook, or playing, just mobile games itself. But an iPad versus using consoles and computers. So it was Marcus went on to talk about, using controllers to when using mobile games versus, Michael talked about being able to use multiple thumbs for, computer PC gaming. And I thought he did a good job describing how the looking at the future of things. Mobile is very now, and maybe it was 5 years ago that, mobile gaming coming out with all these different concepts around your phone. But, the bodysuit idea and getting each person really involved and using multiple ways to interact with the games really excited me and presented in a futuristic approach that I really thought, could bring esports to the next level and continue to adapt to technology. So I thought Michael also explained that answer very well. And I was excited about the future of not only adults, but kids learning through educational, aspects of video games as well. And that kind of ties into the first question around violence, and just a common theme throughout is no matter what age you are, you can still be learning and learning different aspects of the world and educational purposes through something as simple as a video game. And I think that's what sports, teaches us from a very young age, from all social aspects to educational aspects to technology aspects. So I thought overall, throughout, Michael did a good job of creating, real world examples. Marcus touched on a lot of points about esports, what's going on in today's world, but Michael did a good job of, bringing his own ideas to life and talking about where it's going in the future. So my vote overall was Michael for the debate as well.
Thank you for that insight, Ben. And that gives 2 out of the 3 votes to Michael. So that would automatically make him to the next round. But we would still like to get the insight from Lance here on your analysis and breakdown on that round. So if you don't mind sharing your vote, regardless, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure, Nick. Thanks. Like Ben said, I thought it was a great debate. Both Marcus and Michael know a ton about the industry, have some strong views, and I thought did a great job bringing that to life. I won't rehash kind of what Waylon and Ben said about the industry, but I guess I'll highlight a couple things that I think they both, touched on, and I think is kind of what's coming in the future. And one is the social piece of games, how do you bring more people into the fold? And it starts to blend a little bit too with this education piece, right? Games are being used in a lot of different ways beyond entertainment. And I think it's really interesting to see how kind of, people come for the game itself, for the education piece, but as Andreessen said, they stay for the party. And I think you're seeing that happening a lot more now. And I think this immersive experience of gaming, be it in AR and VR, be it via robotics, as Michael mentioned, I think this idea of a synthetic reality that Bitcraft has talked about, and this idea of immersive experiences, gaming broadly beyond entertainment, be it education, social, I think is really, really interesting, and something that we're looking forward to see kind of as the space unfolds. I also gave a bit of a nod to Michael in terms of the overall debate. I thought it was really tough. It was close. But in general, I guess what got me in terms of just, debate style in general is his ability to tap into, specific examples, backing up kind of his claims on certain things. And you saw Marcus do that a bit towards the end, but I felt like Michael did it better throughout each one of the questions. And so although it was tight, I gave my nod to Michael.
Great. Well, I appreciate that insight, Lance. And congratulations to Michael for winning that round. And you found yourself a way to the Elite 8. So congratulations on that. I just want to thank Marcus as well for a great, well-fought debate. So thank you for everyone tuning in, and on to the next round.